Hello, London. Welcome to the Manish Tiwari show. We started last Saturday, and the world was different. Between then and now, something cataclysmic has happened. The world has changed forever again. London is the multicultural capital of the world. Everything which happens in the world affects us, and nothing would have affected us so much as to what has happened in the United States. An election has gone by, and the results are yet not declared. Today, we have a very eminent personality with us in our studios. He is a known face on British television. He's very often seen on BBC. He writes for The Spectator magazine. He has been the longest serving correspondent, foreign correspondent for India, based out of United Kingdom. He's served Indian media for the 43 longest years. He's a well-known name. His books have been bestsellers. His last one, which is called Laid to Rest, his kind of dissertation on Subhash Chandra Bose and the mystery surrounding his life and his death has been published to a very wide and critical acclaim. Let me invite and welcome Ashis Ray to our studios.
Thank you very much, Manish. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. So Ashish, as I said, like today, we should have been looking, or at least kind of been watching the American president swear, and take White House, take his new office. It might have happened on Thursday or Friday or Monday, but so far there seems to be no clarity, or we are inching towards some level of clarity, but there are clouds of doubt still pending large over his candidature. Between last week and now, we've seen a lot of action. We've seen Trump claiming that he has won the elections. We've seen counting being stopped once, and we're seeing that it's resumed again, and Joe Biden is in the lead. As we talk right now, the counting is going on, and with some level of estimation, we can assume that he might come back to power. Now, this is one of the most divisive elections in the American history, at least in the history as we know. In the last 40, 50 years, there's nothing, none of the elections have been so bitterly fought. And you have the president-elect, the present president-elect, which is Trump, and the to-be president-elect, which we are assuming might be Joe Biden, from whatever information we have. This has huge implication for the whole world. What I would like to know from you, how you see what has happened in the United States, because this is kind of, in the land of the free, where we always assumed, which we always assumed as the bastion of democracy, which the whole world looked towards for, democratic institutions, where observers were called from whenever there was an election going on in a different part of the world, especially in the third world, where there was always, where from time to time there has been doubts whether the elections would be free and fair, and you would get observers from the United States. So this is like the holy land of democracy, and you see something which has not happened ever before. There's the president-elect, the current president-elect, who's refusing to give up his office, and there are lawsuits which are going to be filed. What do you see the situation as, and where do you think things are going to go in the next couple of weeks? Over to you, Ashis.
Well, first of all, I think the incumbent president, which is Donald Trump, is, as of now, within his rights not to concede the election. Conceding an election is a political nicety. In this case, where there's still a little more counting to be done, I think he's within his rights not to concede yet. But what he has done is, I think, he has created confusion by challenging the validity and integrity of the election, which is completely baseless. And what we are going to witness over the next few days is a victory for Joe Biden, and that is inevitable because he is in the lead in Pennsylvania, and winning Pennsylvania alone will give him 20 electoral college votes, which will take him past the threshold of 270, which is what he needs to win a presidential election. So what has happened and will happen, I would imagine, because it's Donald Trump, he has filed a lot of lawsuits in different states to question votes which have been cast as what we call postal ballots. It's called mail-in ballots in the United States. And then, of course, in this extraordinary situation of COVID, what was permitted is for people to do in-person voting for 1 month before actual election day. And so over and above, there was ballots which were cast on election day. So people are being extremely cautious. It's a matter of logistics and it's a matter of time. There's something else also which needs to be emphasized, which is this, that 4 years ago, the director of FBI, James Comey, told a Senate Select Committee that he believed that the 2016 elections were tampered with by Russian intelligence. In other words, what he said was that the Russian intelligence had hacked into voting machines in the United States, and therefore there was some question as to what had exactly happened. And therefore, this time, I think electoral officers have been extremely cautious in order to avoid a repeat of what happened in 2016. In fact, I spoke to Professor Philip Stark of University of California in Berkeley, and he told me, and he's a very close observer of elections, he told me that not only did these irregularities happen 4 years ago, but this time too, he suspects that among the states which had some glitches, as they're called, and when you say glitches, there are serious problems, in Georgia, for instance, and Georgia is still being counted, and it's very close. But having said that, I think in the end, it is better to be cautious and get the result right. And there's absolutely no basis to what Donald Trump has been claiming. The election has been free and fair. There's no question about it. There could be the odd vote here and there, which may have been unlawfully cast, and therefore those votes will be rejected by virtue of the rigorous process of counting that is currently taking place. So sooner or later, there could be court cases, but I do believe that sooner or later we will have Joe Biden, the former vice president under Barack Obama, as president of the United States of America.
Thank you, Ashish. Now, one of the obvious questions which we all have is the implication of this election for South Asia. We know the situation, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, at some point of time, they all have been wanted to be close ally of the United States. Strategically for India, the last few years, from the Modi government perspective, they have tried to forge a special relationship with Trump administration, and there has been an obvious display of, should I say, kind of, affection, bonding, wherein Modi has gone to United States and done an event, Howdy Modi, and similarly Trump came to India, and there was an event held in Gujarat of unprecedented scale, which has never been done for President Trump in India. And Trump in Indian media has been known as Trump Sarkar, as the government of Trump, as an allusion to the Indian way of calling the government. So there has been a lot of, should I say, bonhomie attempt to kind of, between the two leaders, to display a special bonding sense of brotherhood. At the same time, we know that Pakistan strategically has been a partner of the United States in its fight in Afghanistan. Pakistan has been a key ally of the United States. to the extent that at some stage Pakistan was known to be home for American military base, and a lot of covert operations, a lot of operations aimed at Afghanistan, but not just related to Afghanistan, also to the previous Soviet regime have been conducted from there. So now, the last few years, things have been different, and Trump has not alienated himself from Pakistan, but Indians assumed that he would do so at some stage. And for Bangladesh, there's been, the last few years have not been the most significant. I don't think Trump has played any or has kind of displayed any special affection towards Bangladesh. So, what do you think is the strategic outcome of this election and the fact that we might have a change in presidency in the next few days or weeks, whatever it takes? What are the implications for South Asia? How does it affect the stratagem in South Asia? And do you think there would be anything significant? There's something significant to talk about here?
Well, obviously, a change of government will mean implications for international relations as far as the United States is concerned. You will find, most importantly, a stable relationship with the rest of the world, as opposed to a very unpredictable relationship which has prevailed in the last 4 years. So you will find the restoration of good relations between the United States and Europe, for instance, between the United States and Japan, for example. And of course, it would have implications for South Asia. I do remember that the last time that a Secretary of State visited Bangladesh was Hillary Clinton. And quite rightly, as you have said, there has not been a great deal of traffic between the United States and Bangladesh in the last 4 years. And the relationship as far as Pakistan and India has changed. So as you rightly pointed out, the old ally, indeed a military ally, has been Pakistan since the 1950s. So it was a very close relationship between Pakistan and the United States. But starting from 1991, when the famous and landmark Indian economic reforms took place, there's been a steady move towards India on the part of Washington. And what we have witnessed in the last 4 years is militarily a closer relationship. Now, this is a very controversial matter in India for various reasons. And people would say that India has always kept out of military alliances. India simply does not do military alliances. But what has happened, at the very least, is an alignment. And that, again, is something which is against Indian history, because India started non-alignment and therefore wanted to always maintain an equidistance from superpowers. But the Modi government has tilted towards the United States. And most recently, in fact, just last week, there was this agreement on military cooperation. Now, this is going to be, as I said, a matter that will be discussed by the new administration in India. I don't think the new administration would like to disturb this agreement, for the simple reason that Joe Biden has made it very clear in his manifesto that he would like to create a coalition of countries to contain China's aggressive designs. And so I think this cooperation will continue, but what India would like to resist, and certainly this is the bulk of opinion in India, is a military alliance. You can have a strategic tie-up, if you like, but not a military alliance, and certainly not India fighting America's wars in Asia, such as, for instance, in Afghanistan. The Trump administration was very keen that India send troops to Afghanistan to fight battles there. It's something that India should not do and hopefully will not do. If it is a matter of sending a diplomatic signal to China that we are together, please do not behave in a boisterous and belligerent manner, then I think that is acceptable. But beyond that is difficult. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I think the United States still needs Pakistan to find a solution in Afghanistan. And Pakistan can play a role, a positive role, if it so desires, in that direction. So I don't think the relationship between Washington and Pakistan can be brushed away so easily. I don't think the United States will do that, but they will balance it. And I think the other aspect that you might find in a Biden presidency, one has to mention that although you might say that the United States has moved closer to India militarily, but India has actually coughed up something like $23 billion in terms of buying armaments and heavy military hardware from the United States. So in a way, Trump has been laughing all the way to the bank. And also, Trump cracked down on visas for Indians who needed to go there on intra-company transfers. And then on trade, India has suffered as far as the preferential treatment that it used to enjoy, but it doesn't any longer. So I think India will certainly be hoping that on the visa front and on the trade front, there will be an improvement in relations between India and Washington. And in the meanwhile, of course, they will straighten out the relationship as far as military and strategic cooperation is concerned.
Ashish, thank you so much. I think the points which you made are very valid. But still, I find it hard to believe that the ultra-right wing in India has been gunning for a major victory for Trump. And I think the Indian media has been full of predictions of Trump coming back to power, which is kind of strange. There have been all kinds of astrologers in India who have been looking at Trump's charts and predicting that Trump is going to come back. So there's a special love, it seems, of some elements. And when I say ultra-right wing, I mean a certain kind of political ideology, which seems to be very well aligned with the right wing in the United States, which is kind of bit, if you look at it objectively, it doesn't kind of gel together because both are very different ideologies. We have a call coming in. Can we take the call now?
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, my name is Shafiq. Whoever coming in the United States of America president, we don't worry about anything, but I like to say United Nations Council, the last Queen.
Sorry, it's not clear. Hi. Okay, it's gone. Okay, that's fine. So, Ashish, what do you think? Was this alignment something by design, or it happened out of some other kind of ambition? Was it kind of triggered by the governments, or was it something which had its origin somewhere else? Because while all this was going on, Trump did not do anything for India. He did not allow more Indians to go to the United States. And he did not do anything decisive. Even in the case of Pakistan, he didn't do anything decisive which India can claim as victory in the true sense. So what exactly was going on here?
Well, from the Indian standpoint, this military cooperation, this enhanced military cooperation is clearly dictated by the fact that Chinese troops are sitting inside Indian territory in Ladakh. And so, in a way, it's been a panic reaction on the part of Narendra Modi. I don't think this was entirely necessary because historically, certainly since the Indian relationship with China improved significantly after the Peace and Tranquility Treaty that was signed between India and China when Prime Minister Narasimha Rao was in power. Since then, it has been a decent relationship, and trade has galloped between the two countries. But of late, there's been tension. There was tension in Doklam near the Sikkim border, and now for months there's been difficulty in Ladakh. And I think India is better off dealing directly with China rather than ganging up with the United States against China. China has not behaved well, it has to be said. But at the same time, I think Indian diplomats, and I talk about the professionals, the career diplomats, are capable of handling China if given the responsibility to do so.
Fair enough. So, in your view, the last few years, India aligning with the United States has not really amounted to anything significant? Yes?
No, I wouldn't say that. What I would say is that, it's to play America's game in Asia should not be Indian foreign policy. There are undoubtedly gains from the closer relationship with the United States. And certainly this is reflected in terms of the trade turnover between the two countries. So that has to be admitted. But if you're talking about India benefiting as far as the United States putting pressure on China or Pakistan, it hasn't quite happened.
Sure. Ashish, we will be back right after the break. I was listening to Lord Derek earlier this morning on BBC, and he had a very useful observation to the whole situation. And he was rather critical of the way Joe Biden, if he comes to presidency, would be dealing with the United Kingdom government. And more specifically, he was rather critical of the way the new democratic government in the United States would deal with Boris. And that rings alarm bells. Yesterday's newspaper, yesterday's Evening Standard, Peter Osborne made a comment that the end of the Trump empire, he used the word Trump empire, the end of the Trump empire would spell disaster for Boris. So I think there are political pundits who have subscribed a lot of weight to the present situation. And if Joe Biden comes to power, definitely they do see that the US-UK alignment, which has been historical, I mean, US and UK in terms of how the political alignment has happened historically, they have always been together in most of the times in history, whether it be the Cold War era, whether the World War II, or times in between when the world opinion has been divided, you see US and UK coming together. So this is going to be a historical moment when you have Boris in the United Kingdom and if Joe Biden comes to power in the United States, and they might not be aligned the same way. Trump had made a comment about Boris some time back that Boris is his mini-me. So, what do you think is going to happen now in terms of the two leaders? Do you think there will be the usual chemistry? Do you think they will make the effort and will have the same kind of camaraderie which we have seen in the past?
Well, for a start, I've observed this relationship between the United States and United Kingdom very closely for 45 years. And my view is that fundamentally, it's a special relationship. It's a relationship cast in stone. So I don't think a change of government in either country is going to make a basic difference to the relationship. Obviously, Joe Biden has said certain things about Boris. He has described Boris Johnson as a clone of Donald Trump, which is not a great compliment. And he and his team, and that includes Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, have made it very clear that if there's any disturbance to the Good Friday Agreement, which governs Northern Ireland, then the United Kingdom could forget a trade relationship that is a free trade relationship with the United States. Now, I think what we have seen in the last few days, and as we speak over this weekend, movement towards presumably a trade agreement between the UK and the European Union as Britain comes out of the Union at the end of this year. Now that, I think, is a sign that if you move in that direction, then that will certainly please the United States, because the United States, and Joe Biden, by the way, was very disappointed with the vote that took place in 2016, wherein Britain voted to exit the European Union. And that being the case, I think he believes that a close relationship with Europe and a close relationship with the United Kingdom is in the best interests of the West vis-a-vis the Russians. And one of the things that has happened under Donald Trump is that there's been a slight breakdown in cooperation as far as NATO is concerned. And NATO is the military alliance of the West against the Russians. So all this, I think, will be in play. I do believe that when Biden and Johnson meet, I think Biden will realize that Johnson is a bright enough person, and that he's not really a clone of Trump. And I'm sure the relationship will move forward. But as I said, one of the cardinal rules of this relationship has to be no tamperance with the Good Friday Agreement that governs Northern Ireland.
Thank you. There's another question, which is basically, how do you deal with the ultra-nationalist or ultra-right-wing nationalists in the current situation? And obviously, Trump being in his presidency in the United States has given a lot of boost to such elements in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and in other parts of the world, like Brazil is another example, and of course in other parts of the world. So it does not surprise us when we have ultra-right-wing elements in certain parts of the world, but it does bother us a lot more when we have those elements right here in the West, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, because they can cause havoc. You know, they can practically change some very cardinal, fundamental basis, or some of the most benevolent things which have happened, like aligning against climate change, for instance, which was reversed by Trump. And similarly, in the United Kingdom, we have people like Nigel Farage, who have gained popularity by saying things which should not be said, and by kind of dividing the society. And Nigel Farage was obviously someone who Trump liked very much. He was invited by Trump during his election tour while 2020 elections were happening. Do you think this would end, or this would kind of give, in some way, take away rather, not give, rather take away the global status these figures have gained, like Nigel Farage has gained kind of a global stature? Do you think Joe Biden moving into White House would possibly bring an end to all this?
Well, first of all, I don't think Nigel Farage is a figure beyond Britain. And I think his role as far as British politics is concerned is now diminished because he has done what he had set out to do, which was to achieve Brexit, and he certainly helped the process in terms of the right wing in this country consolidating, the nationalist forces in this country consolidating to get Britain over the line as far as leaving the EU is concerned. Today, he doesn't have any impactful role to play, and I don't think he has much of a future in British politics. Brexit has been achieved. At the end of this year, Britain will be out of the European Union with or without a trade deal. And in future, I think the rise of Joe Biden, a Joe Biden presidency, will mean, I think, an enhancement of the role of the Labour Party in this country. Because certainly the victory of Biden will be warmly welcomed by Labour. And there's already an indication that in the opinion polls in Britain, both Labour and their new leader, Keir Starmer, have been gaining ground, whereas Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party, which is now in government, have been losing ground. So that is something I see happening over the next few years. There is, of course, no election scheduled in this country till another 4 years. But I do believe that Labour is certainly on track unless Boris Johnson gets his act together, which unfortunately he has failed to do in terms of both COVID and the economy.
Thank you, Ashish. Now, Ashish, you have been a very keen observer of the events which have unfolded in the subcontinent. You know quite a first-hand experience of the many events in the subcontinent, especially the political storms which have come and gone. One of the key things which I want to talk to you about is the relationship between India and Bangladesh. I believe you have known Indira Gandhi in your personal capacity. You've seen how the 1971 war came to being, and we all know that Bangladesh was born out of that. Subsequently, things have not been as smooth as one would have wanted it to be. I mean, India and Bangladesh should have been strategic partners. We can't imagine Bangladesh in any sense threatening India in terms of military or economic, as a military or economic power. So I don't think there's any level of threat or competition, if I can say. But still, a natural partnership which came into being post 1971 has not really flowered or bloomed. In fact, things have gone from bad to worse. And in the last few years, I don't think there's been any attempt other than making the right sound or making the right noise. I mean, there have been a few incidents which you can say that, yeah, the leaders have worked towards something. But in the true sense, I don't think the two countries are getting any closer. I would have assumed that Bangladesh should have been another Nepal for India. In the same way that India has a lot of ease in terms of traveling to Nepal. We don't have any visa restrictions. Nepal, in many ways, is indigenously aligned to the Indian foreign policy. But with Bangladesh, there seems to be a lot of friction from time to time. And with the new CA announcements that Amit Shah made earlier this year, I believe it has not been taken down very well in Bangladesh. And something doesn't seem to be right. And this is not just about now. It's been the case for the last decade or so. This is not in particular in relationship to the Modi government and the present Hasina government in Bangladesh, but there seems to be something simmering there. It doesn't seem to be getting on the smooth road which we should have got into. And I keep coming back to 1971 when India and Bangladesh kind of where, that was like the birth of a nation, a big brotherly relationship which India had with Bangladesh, but things have not gone well. And you've seen all the leaders who have come and gone on the stage. What do you think? What is your assessment of this present situation, and where do you think historically we went wrong?
Well, I think India-Bangladesh relations are not bad for the simple reason that a couple of years ago, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, they did a survey and they came out with the view that while India has lost friends among its neighbors, the relationship with Bangladesh and Bhutan was still very good. And I do believe that that survey was correct. And so it has been a close, friendly relationship between the two countries. And what has happened lately, as you have rightly alluded to, are these matters like the Citizenship Amendment Act, which has been promulgated by the present Modi government, and also the National Register for Citizens, which is still there on the anvil. And that naturally has been directed at countries like Bangladesh. And that, quite rightly too, has brought about a bit of concern and disappointment in Bangladesh. I think the natural relationship between the two countries is when Congress are in government in India and the Awami League in Bangladesh. That said, at the moment, there is obviously a different government in India, and there is a bit of a jarring relationship between the two. But I think the fundamentals are still very sound. There's a very, very good trading relationship between the two countries. It's flourishing. It continues to flourish. Of course, COVID has impacted on trade and economic matters, and we will find that once this COVID crisis is over, it will be back to normal. Bangladesh, it has to be mentioned, has been a success story in terms of its economic growth. Before COVID struck, Bangladesh's economic GDP growth was 8.1%. It was quite staggering. And even now, the forecasts from the World Bank and the IMF are that even with this COVID situation, Bangladesh could end up with a 4% GDP growth, which would be a very, very successful state of affairs. On the other hand, the Indian economy has collapsed because in the terrible quarter of April to June, the Indian economy contracted by something like 24%. And so that will naturally have an impact. But I believe that between friends, there should be a civil relationship. Now, just a few days ago, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, he accused Bangladesh of sending in infiltrators into the country. Now, that is not what you say when you are talking about a friendly nation. And Bangladesh is a friendly country as far as India is concerned. So I think the overall relationship will remain sound. I don't think it's going to go downwards. What you can say, it has not gone upwards, and there has been a bit of strain. Bangladesh, I think, has been very diplomatic in not really talking about it too much, although it has expressed concern to the Indian government. But over the years, if you look at it, beginning with the close relationship between Indira Gandhi and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, there has been progress. The Ganga water sharing treaty took place. Exchange of enclaves in North Bengal also took place. And as I said, overall, when it comes to cooperation, it's been pretty good. Now, as far as Nepal is concerned, it has been a special relationship for a very, very long time, since the early 1950s. And that special relationship has meant free movement between the peoples of the two countries. Now, one day, if there is a kind of European Union in the Indian subcontinent, perhaps that will happen. But for the time being, I think, as I said, trade will continue to grow, and there could be greater cooperation in various fields. And I do believe that a close relationship between Bangladesh and India is not only good for the region, but it's good for the world.
Well, I do certainly hope that we do create our own union, a SAARC union of some sorts. And I do hope it happens in our lifetime, where we can move freely between all these countries. Now, Ashish, I also believe that you've known Mujibur Rahman, as in you've seen him in close quarters. This is his 100th year. Would you like to share something with us? How well did you know him, or what's your impression?
No, I did not know Mujibur Rahman. I haven't seen him from close quarters. Of course, I did know Indira Gandhi, and I did cover her period as Prime Minister in the second phase when she came back to power at the end of 1979. I also covered her visits to Britain when she came here, particularly one in 78. When she was out of power and visited as leader of the Congress Party. But Mujibur Rahman, I saw from a distance, and I must narrate to you what exactly happened. After the birth of Bangladesh, and when Mujibur Rahman was released from a Pakistani prison and was flown to London, he then flew back to Dhaka, having stopped in Delhi en route. So this was January 1972. The liberation of East Pakistan and the birth of Bangladesh was December 1971. So January is when he was released, and he went back to Dhaka to a tumultuous welcome. And I still remember the television pictures at that time. And then in February 1972, he visited Kolkata, which is my home city. And there was this gathering, a rally of at least 1 million people. And I was one of the 1 million when I heard him address that massive rally in Kolkata. And I remember his famous words that, which he said in Bengali, that, I have nothing to offer but friendship and love to India. So those were quite remarkable days.
Very nice to know that.
My father, mind you, my father met him after the liberation of Bangladesh in Dhaka. The reason being that my father was a doctor, and as a doctor, he and his fellow doctors had set up these camps to attend to injured Bangladeshi Mukti Bahini guerrillas. And they could have incurred injuries, even bullet injuries and so on from Pakistani forces. And they would therefore then be brought across the border into West Bengal and be treated at these camps. And my father had been running these camps along the border. And so after the liberation of Bangladesh, my father and one of my uncles, who was also a doctor, went to Dhaka, visited Mujibur Rahman. And there's quite a famous photo in our house of the three of them together.
So that reminds me that you were supposed to go to the Dhaka Literary Festival this year. And you're supposed to launch your book there, the one on Subhash Chandra Bose, Laid to Rest. Is that correct?
I was supposed to go there this year. The Dhaka Literature Festival had invited me, I think, last year or the year before for the same purpose. But then I ultimately decided that I will go this year, which unfortunately didn't happen. And then this COVID situation took over. So I'm hoping that sometime next year I will go either to the Dhaka Literature Festival or to the what is known as the Boy Mela, the book fair in Dhaka, perhaps both. And hopefully my book will be launched in Bangladesh and I will get an opportunity to speak about the book. There seems to be a fair amount of interest in the book in Bangladesh on Subhash Bose, and therefore I'm really looking forward to the trip. I've been to Dhaka many times, of course, in the past. I've also visited Chittagong and such areas, and I do look forward to going there again.
Great. So I have a copy of your book. So you can see this. This is the book which Ashis Ray kindly gifted me, and I've read it. Of course, it's not an easy read because there are lots of details, and he's delved and he's kind of done his research. But the fact remains that he's brought a controversy to an end, and he has summed up the life and death of one of India's legendary, or Bengal's legendary freedom fighter, Subhash Chandra Bose. And there should not be much doubt after reading this book that what happened is conclusive. And the conspiracy theory model, or rather, I kind of call it the WhatsApp model of knowledge dissemination, should come to an end, because that's causing havoc. That's what brought, I believe, the last or the present president-elect into power in the United States. It had a role. I mean, the social media, WhatsApp and Facebook stories had a role, and I think it's time that we get our education from the sources which are better researched and which are authentic. So we're coming to the end of the show. Ashish, thank you very much for being here. I believe Bangladesh owes a lot to you, or rather to your dad, because he worked for the Mukti Bahini. He helped them through the camps. So I wish you a very good luck when you visit Dhaka, hopefully in 2021, and launch your book there. But it was a pleasure talking to you about the current elections, and if we can take the liberty, we can say that, as you said, Joe Biden would come to power, or looks very, very likely. And in spite of whatever legal claims, it looks almost certain, because there has been no proof of the wrongdoings, or at least we have not seen it so far. So here's to a new world and a new president in the United States. And we look forward to what the next week would bring to all of us. But till that time, keep watching, and I will be back again next Saturday and welcome you again to the Manish Tiwari Show. This is a show to bring the multicultural aspect, the multicultural facet of this great city, and I hope to be with you again here next Saturday. Till then, goodbye and have a great weekend.